while he wept for joy to hear. Piper, sit thee down and write in a book that all may read. So he vanished from my sight, and I plucked a hollow reed. And I made a royal pen, and I stained the water clear, and I wrote my happy songs, every child may joy to hear. William Blake, 1757 to 1827. William Blake was born in London in 1757. His father, a hosier, soon recognized his son's artistic talents and sent him to study at a drawing school when he was 10 years old. At age 14, William asked to be apprenticed to the engraver James Basire, under whose direction he further developed his innate skills. As a young man, Blake worked as an engraver, illustrator, and drawing teacher. Blake wrote poems during this time as well, and his first printed collection, an immature and rather derivative volume called Poetical Sketches, appeared in 1783. Songs of Innocence was published in 1789, followed by Songs of Experience in 1793, and a combined edition the next year bearing the title Songs of Innocence and Experience, showing the two contrary states of the human soul. Blake published almost all of his works himself by an original process in which the poems were etched by hand, along with illustrations and decorative images onto copper plates. These plates were inked to make prints, and the prints were then colored in with paint. This expensive and labor-intensive production method resulted in quite a limited circulation of Blake's poetry during his life. It has also posed a special set of challenges to scholars of Blake's work, which has interested both literary critics and art historians. Most students of Blake find it necessary to consider his graphic art and his writing together. Certainly, he himself thought of them as inseparable. The use of symbols is one of the most striking features of Blake's poetry. There is hardly any poem written by Blake which does not possess a symbolic meaning. In the introduction to Songs of Experience, the bard, being the poet, who is inspired as a prophet who has the power of seeing present, past, and future, has also been symbolized as Christ, who asks the mankind to wake up from its slumberous sleep. He has heard God's message, and if mankind will only hear this message, a new dawn of happiness will break. Man has lapsed from its original happy state in the Garden of Eden, but there is a hope of recovering that state. London is a poem that depicts sordid and sad conditions of life. The word chartered comes from business, trade, and commerce, but here it means the street which has its economic value. Water in the rivers represents sense of life. Water sustains us, and the Thames stand for a symbol of life and rejuvenation. London represents a genteel character, as it is still a city based on traditional values, although it has its vices too. But although the city is very old, strong, and well-planned, yet from a cursory glance it is evident that it is hollow from inside, as the people have marks of weakness and misery on their faces. Perhaps the most striking image in the Songs of Experience is the tiger. To the mind in the state of innocence, the lamb appears to be a fit symbol of life. To the mind which has experienced the disappointments, the sorrows, and injustice of life, the tiger appears as the symbol. The tiger is relentless, strong, remorseless, but beautiful, and it is already the nature that every God's creature has its beauty. But although the tiger is beautiful, it is a symbol of the violent and terrifying forces for man, as the phrase fearful symmetry. The tiger is also a symbol of generation, full of life, energy, and passion. The tiger actually does not exist in the cloud or in the sky. The existence that is meant here is the existence of the Spirit of God. God may exist everywhere. Blake here tries to represent things in a sense of their spirit, not merely as objects as to say that this is the thing. Actually, Blake in this poem talks about human beings and the spirit they have. As God has created lamb as well as tiger, ignorance and awareness are knowledge. Therefore, good and evil always exist in the world. This is why we as human beings must be able to control or stabilize our life, because our brain is very easy to construct. One of Blake's most strongly religious poems, The Lamb, takes the pastoral life of the lamb and fuses it with the biblical symbolism of Jesus Christ as the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. By using poetic rhetorical questions, the speaker, who is probably childlike rather than actually a child, creates a sort of lyric catechism in which the existence of both a young boy and a tender lamb stand as proof of a loving, compassionate Creator. The Creator here, identified specifically as Jesus Christ by his title of Lamb of God, displays these characteristics in his design of the natural and human world, and in his offer of salvation to all, hence the child is also called by his name. Through his incarnation, he became a little child, and presumably his death and resurrection. William Blake's poems are riddled with personification. In the voice of the ancient bard, the final sestet begins with a blanket statement about the danger of folly, while the remaining lines develop the dangers of giving into or being drawn in by folly. Similarly to the biblical book of Proverbs, Blake personifies folly as female and uses the metaphor of tangled roots to point out the traps that she lays for the unwary. The bard's charge is clear: beware the pitfalls of archaic social restrictions and religious institutions that seek to lead others when they should be led, and instead follow the inner desire to enjoy nature and explore imagination, and all will be well. The love that has been bound by reason and which must be renewed in order to free earth from her change is thus examined in this poem, The Clod and the Pebble. The clod has been trotted with a cattle's feet so that it is malleable, but also easily shaped to the will of others. The pebble has been hardened by its time in the brook and therefore offers resistance to any who would seek to use it for their own ends. By contrast, the clod is somewhat mobile, whereas the petal must remain at rest in its place on the bottom of the brook. Nonetheless, the poem does not allow the reader to side completely with the clod and its view of love. Both clod and pebble experience loss. The pebble rejoices in the loss of others, while the clod rejoices in its own loss of ease. Even the clod's heaven is built on despair of hell, thus taking from another in order to increase. In the experienced mind, exploitation of others is a requirement for progress of any sort. In My Pretty Rose Tree, the first stanza describes the speaker's temptation in being offered another flower, as well as his protest that he has his own rose tree at home and so he does not need another. The second stanza turns up to the outcome of his fidelity. The rose tree is too jealous to see the speaker as faithful and so offers him only thorns. The rose tree is personified in that it can turn away from the speaker and feel jealousy, pointing clearly to the use of the rose tree and the flower of the first stanza as metaphors respectively for the speaker's true love or wife and for a temptress placed in his path. The AABB rhyme scheme is often used by Blake in Songs of Innocence to invoke the sing-song quality of children's songs, and by extension their innocence and unquestioning joy at life. The Laughing Song is a 3-stanza lyric poem. Each stanza has 2 rhyming couplets. The AABB rhyme scheme is also used. The Laughing Song is truly a song, intended for singing aloud, with a simple rhythm inviting an equally simple melody. Blake himself was known to sing his songs aloud. Thus, the poem expresses the simple pleasures that anyone can see in the world around him at any time. On Another Sorrow is a 9-stanza poem consisting of quatrains following the AABB rhyme scheme of 2 rhyming couplets. Blake structures this poem differently from any others in Songs of Innocence, placing the first 4 stanzas in a column parallel to the next 4 stanzas, with the 9th stanza centered below the rest of the poem. The content of each stanza is similarly structured, with the first 4 stanzas all asking the rhetorical question, "Can I?" or "Can he?" referring to God. The 5th through 8th stanza answer the question with God's response to misery, both human and animal. Finally, the 9th stanza forms a coda to the poem, declaring the compassion of God in giving us joy to eliminate our sorrows. The Chimney Sweeper, a poem in the Song of Experience, starts with the AABB rhyme scheme characteristic of innocence and childhood, but as it delves deeper into the experience of the chimney sweeper, it switches to CD, CD, EF, EF for the last 2 stanzas. The final stanza, in fact, has only a near rhyme between injury, line 10, and misery, line 12, suggesting an increasing breakdown in the chimney sweeper's world, or the social order in general. The Sick Rose keeps with much of the Songs of Experience. This poem is brief with 2 stanzas and deviates from the innocent rhyme scheme of AABB. Here the rhyme scheme is AB, CB, DE, FE. It introduces a note of discord in keeping with the ill effects of the secret love which the rose hides, much to its detriment. In 2002, Blake was placed at number 38 in BBC's poll of the 100 Greatest Britons. Jonathan Jones of The Guardian said of Blake, as being far and away the greatest artist Britain has ever produced. Blake's Songs of Innocence and Experience and The Marriage of Heaven and Hell are never likely to be shifted from their place near the heart of English literature. But Blake thought of himself as a visual artist. He illuminated his self-published writings, illustrated Dante and Chaucer, and painted singular orals such as The Ghost of a Flea. Robert Hunt, a critic in the early 1800s, said Blake fancies himself a great master and has painted a few wretched pictures, some of which are unintelligible allegory, others an attempt at sober character by caricature representation, and the whole blotted and blurred and very badly drawn. These he calls an exposition, of which he has published a catalogue, or rather a farrago of nonsense, unintelligibleness, and egregious vanity, the wild effusions of a distempered brain.